The sun had not yet risen when the first man opened his eyes. He did not have a name. No one in the dry valley had names yet. They called one another by the sounds they made when they were happy or afraid or hungry. His sound was a low click of the tongue against the roof of the mouth, like two stones knocking together. Click, click. That was him. He stood on the cracked red earth of what would one day be called the Great Rift Valley, 3.8 million years ago. Behind him, the others slept curled like unborn children under thorn trees. Their bodies were small, their arms long, their faces pushed forward into muzzles. They still spent half their lives in branches, but this morning, Click-Click felt something pulling him down to the ground for good. He straightened. His spine cracked like dry wood. The pain was new, bright, and welcome. When he stood fully upright, the world looked different. The horizon was no longer hidden by weeds. He could see the smoke of distant volcanoes, the shimmer of a lake that still held water, and far away, impossibly far, something moving that was larger than anything he had ever imagined. A shadow longer than 100 acacia trees slid across the plain. Click-Click did not know fear the way we know it. His heart beat faster, yes, but it also beat with hunger. Hunger for meat, for safety, for tomorrow. He turned back to the sleeping band and made the alarm cry, sharp, 3 times. The others woke. Mothers clutched infants to their breasts. Old ones bared yellow canines. They followed his gaze. The shadow resolved itself into a body, a snake so vast it seemed like a river that had learned to move without water. Titanoboa. 48 feet of muscle and scale, thick as the trunk of the greatest tree they knew. Its head rose higher than the tallest of them could reach, even if they stood on one another's shoulders. Its eyes were flat gold corns, ancient and patient. The little band scattered like seeds in the wind. Some ran for trees that were no longer tall enough. Some froze. Click-Click alone did not run. He picked up a fist-sized stone, the first tool, and hurled it. The stone struck the Titanoboa just below the eye. A meaningless blow, but the first act of defiance in the long story of mankind. The great snake blinked once, slowly. It was not angry. It was not even interested. It was simply hungry. And the upright apes were new on the menu. That day, the band lost 7. Mothers wailed. Blood soaked the dust. But 7 survivors, including Click-Click. And something hardened inside them. They began to walk upright more often. Their hands, now free, learned to carry sticks sharpened in fire. They learned that running was not always the answer. Sometimes standing together, shouting together, throwing together, that worked too. Millions of years passed like breaths in a dream. 2 million years later, a taller man with a heavier brow ridge stood on the same plain, though now it was greener, wetter, full of horses and antelope. His name sound was a grunt followed by a click. Click. He was Homo erectus, and he carried fire in a clay bowl lined with moss. His band followed the rivers, following the herds, following the dream that one day they would not have to run. One evening, as thunder rolled across the sky, Click saw the shadow again. The same impossible length, the same flat golden eyes. Titanoboa should have been extinct for millions of years, crushed by the cooling world, starved when the great mammals died. But here it was, risen from some hidden geothermal river deep beneath the earth, unchanged, eternal. The band formed a circle, spears outward. Children were pushed to the center. The women screamed and hurled burning brands. The Titanoboa struck. One man was taken so fast, his spear remained standing upright in the earth. But fire hurt it. The smell of burning scale filled the air. For the first time in its long life, the serpent felt something close to pain. It retreated, trailing smoke and rage. Click lived. His children lived. And in the ashes of that night, they learnt that fire was more than warmth. It was the first wall between man and the ancient dark. Another million years. Now the man was shorter, stockier, wrapped in furs stitched with bone needles. His beard was red, his eyes ice blue. He was Neanderthal, and he carried a spear tipped with flint so sharp it could split a mammoth's heart. His name was a soft humming. Hum. He lived in the cold north, but legends had followed his people south. Stories of the great serpent that never died, that slept under the roots of the world and woke when men grew too proud. One winter, the earth shook. A cliff split open like a rotten fruit, and from the steaming fissure poured hot water and the smell of sulfur. And the serpent, bigger now, if that was possible, 60 feet. Scales scarred from fire and spear, but still perfect, still patient. The Neanderthals fought like wolves. They sang as they died, deep voices echoing off the rocks. They broke their spears inside its mouth. They poured burning pine resin down its throat. Hum himself climbed onto its back and drove a bone dagger into the base of its skull again and again until his arms were jelly. The serpent thrashed. Mountains of flesh slammed into stone. When it finally lay still, half the tribe lay with it. Hum sat on the corpse and wept, not for the dead, but because he knew. He knew this was not the end. Something that old does not die. It waits. He was right. Homo sapiens came next. Tall, slender, dark-skinned, brilliant. They painted caves, invented bows, domesticated dogs, crossed oceans in boats made of reeds. They told stories around fires about the first enemy, the one that walked before walking was invented. And in the year we would call 2025, though calendars meant nothing to the old powers, a young man named Lakti walked the same red valley. Lakti belonged to the Hadza, one of the last hunter-gatherer peoples on Earth. His skin was painted white with clay for a ceremony. His hair stood in wild spikes. Around his waist, he wore a strip of goatskin. He carried a bow of olive wood and arrows tipped with poison from the desert rose. He was 23 summers old, and he had never seen a city. He had never needed to. His people looked exactly like the men in the photograph who sent me. Lean, ribs showing, eyes that had stared down lions and lived. They still clicked their tongues when they were content. They still remembered. On the night of the blood moon, the earth groaned again. Lakti was returning from hunting honey. His mouth was sweet with it. He carried a burning branch to keep leopards away. Then the earth opened. Steam and sulfur poured out, and the serpent rose. It was no longer merely huge. It was mythic. 70 feet, perhaps more. Its scales were black mirrors reflecting the stars. Old scars from fire, spear, and bone dagger crisscrossed its body like a map of human defiance across the ages. Behind it, padding silently, came something else. A smilodon, a saber-toothed cat the size of a buffalo, its fangs dripping starlight. The great cats should have died 10,000 years ago, but the hidden places under the earth do not follow our calendars. Lakti did not run. He remembered the stories his grandmother told by the fire, the stories that began with Click-Click throwing the first stone. He remembered how Groot-Click burned the serpent with fire, how Hum stabbed it until his heart burst, and he remembered the final part of the story, the part only the elders knew. One day, the serpent will come again, larger than ever, angrier than ever. And on that day, a man who still walks as the first men walked, naked under the sun, painted with earth, carrying the old weapons, will stand in its path. Not to kill it, for it cannot be killed, but to remind it. To remind it that every time it wakes, we are still here, still standing, still throwing stones. Lakti dropped the honey. He took the burning branch in his left hand and an arrow in his right. He began to sing the old song, the one without words, just clicks and hums and grunts that had traveled 4 million years inside human throats. The serpent struck. Lakti rolled beneath the jaws that could swallow an elephant. He thrust the burning branch into the soft place under the jaw. Flesh sizzled. The serpent screamed, a sound like continents tearing apart. The Smilodon charged. Lakti loosed his arrow. The poison would take hours, but the cat felt the sting. It roared and leapt. Lakti met it with his small hunting knife, the one his father had given him when he killed his first dik-dik. He drove the knife into the cat's eye. Hot blood poured over his arms. Fangs longer than his forearm raked his side, opening him from ribs to hip. He fell. The serpent